Let me say that I am pinch hitting for PJ today because PJ is work on the polls. So much gratitude to PJ for doing that fantastic work, and we are gonna miss her today and do the best we can without her. Um, Let me also, before we really get started, give a shout out to both Dominique Cooper and Gareth Fenley, who are both on ballots this election season. Our troubler members who are running for office, we love them and appreciate them, and we'll be hearing more from them and about them. Happy to have them here. Um, Let me also invite folks who are new for the first time. If this is your first Troubler meeting, please put your name and email in the chat, and we will be sure to follow up with you. We are so happy to have you here. Um, and a reminder too that that throughout this, we're going to ask folks to keep themselves on mute, but we are really going to invite you to use the chat generously for questions, for comments, for side conversations, whatever the heck you want. Feel free to use the chat, and in each of our for each of our speakers, we'll ask you to put questions in the chat, and then we'll circle back and find those questions after all. So let me go ahead and start the PowerPoint. And as always, much gratitude to Mary Lou, to Pam Wuichet, and to Pat Bird, who do a tremendous job of managing, putting together the agenda and the run of show and the PowerPoint. And we are very happy to have all of you here. Also, just by way of context, I want to remind folks that voting is happening right now. That we have primaries going on for US Congress, for State House, for State Senate, and for the county partisan races. And we have the final elections going on for the county nonpartisan and judicial races. And let me take advantage of this just moment to again ask you, if you're not already muted, if you would mute yourself. And if this is your first Troubler meeting, to please put your name and email address in the chat. And actually, before I do the agenda, I want to say something that kind of relates to who we're going to be hearing from today. Necessary Trouble has been really shaped by a number of big ideas, but our electoral work has been shaped by three in particular. And one principle that we learned early on was to focus at the state level, right? To focus at the state level, because we had a chance of moving the needle at the state level. And so since the very beginning, we have done that. So even, for instance, when we're working on a national election, we're focusing on that election in terms of Georgia, because Georgia is a swing state. Another lesson that we learned very early on, and we learned this from Nikema Williams' husband, Leslie Small, was the whole principle of nested districts. So when we work on a municipal district, we choose a municipal district that is also in a battleground House district, right? If possible, one that's also in a battleground congressional, and then they're all in the battleground Georgia, of course. And so that has really affected the work we do. The reason we worked on Decula municipal races, it's in part it was in Jasmine's district, right? So we do that. It's part of how we choose where we work. The third idea that really affected us and had a big impact on us was the idea of how important it is to run a Democrat in every single race, right? Even the red ones, even the deep red ones, run a Democrat in every single race. And we learned that from David Pepper. Because what you will hear from David Pepper, who will be joining us today, is the reason that matters, which is that it's a way of building the Democratic bench, of building power at the local level, of forcing the Republicans to work hard for every vote they get, of not letting the Republicans take any vote for granted, of having conversation at the local level that is about democratic, capital D, principles. And so the importance of working at the local level is, and of running a Democrat in every race has really profoundly affected the work we do. And so let me go back to our agenda. So we are going to be hearing today from two people. We're going to be hearing from David Pepper himself, who is the author of a book called Laboratories of Autocracy, which are all about state level campaigns. We are going to be hearing from Teddy Smyth, who is a longtime friend of Necessary Trouble and who has just become the general election director of the Georgia Biden-Harris campaign. And then we're going to hear from just a few Troubler updates, since we have a pretty full meeting. So we're going to just hear from a very few Troubler updates. Let me say something about David. Is again, his two big principles are work at the state level and run Democrats in every race. He is the former chair of the Democratic Party of Ohio. He is the founder of something called Blue Ohio, which is really focused on funding Democrats who run even in very red races. And again, he's the author of Laboratories of Autocracy. And I have to admit that I am kind of stalling here because we're waiting. Is David on yet? I don't think he's on yet. Okay, so I think what we're going to do is we're going to play a very small 3-minute, rather than me trying to pretend to be David Pepper until he gets here, we're going to play a very short little videotape that he recorded and he sends out, and that talks just a little bit about some of his ideas. So let me go ahead and do that. Just give me a minute, if you would. Okay.
So I'm here to start the week with some great news for democracy. In the long battle for democracy, something good is building, is happening. A couple of years ago, I explained that in addition to the threat to democracy from the federal level, from Donald Trump and others, the real deeper threat, the longer term threat, has been that they do most of their damage to democracy through the states, through state houses. That's where they suppress voters, that's where they gerrymander, that's where most of the extremism, the abortion bans, other things comes from. And until recently, we let them do it without hardly challenging it. All around the country, in state after state, they would do all this damage to democracy, to rights, to freedom. And in many states, we wouldn't even run against these people. I'm talking about 50 or 60% of the members of these state houses unchallenged. And so a lot of us are saying, we got to start challenging in more places or it's going to just keep going, even if we win the federal offices we want to win. And the good news is, a lot of people are stepping up. We saw in North Carolina, Tennessee, Idaho, Texas, many more people running now than, let's say, ran 2 years ago. So that begins to bring some more accountability, some better messaging to parts of the country where we simply haven't been competing at all. But then the next question becomes, well, once people run, we got to support them, don't we? Well, how are we going to do that? Well, there's a way to do it. And that's the good news. It's starting to work here in Ohio. We need to convince people that to protect democracy, we have to take some small amount of what we typically give to the sort of bigger, high-profile federal races and use it to support the people who are stepping up to run in these frontline democracy races in states. And that's a hard thing to do because they don't get as much attention, but there's something working I want to tell you about. So 2 years ago, myself and some others started something called Blue Ohio. And our bet when we started Blue Ohio was, let's get a lot of people together who are politically motivated, who care about democracy, and let's see if we can get enough people together that if they pitch in, 10, 20 bucks a month, 5, whatever, as part of their overall giving, and we said that money will go to the tougher races for state houses in a state like Ohio, would it accumulate and make a difference? We started that 2 years ago. My update for you now, and we're reaching out to candidates as you speak, is the answer to that question is absolutely. So we convinced over the last couple of years about 1,000 people to join Blue Ohio. They're members, they give some amount a month. Let's say they give between 10 or 15 bucks a month, which is what they're doing. Well, over those 2 years, it's accumulated. Remember, it's a long game. That's a 15. It's a long game. And that money, through monthly meetings and discussions, added up so that this week we are going to be sending out support to 56 candidates. 56 for the Ohio legislature, either the state senate or the state house, all over the state. And we're talking about districts that normally would never get support of this size. We're supporting them. When I say we, I'm talking about 1,000 people giving 10 or 15 bucks a month. The total amount that they will receive together is almost $300,000 from all these grassroots donors. This set of candidates, these 56, before this, they had $100,000 collectively. Well, this will take them to about $400,000. And every month for the rest of this year, we're going to keep giving. And think about that, 56 candidates. Many of these seats wouldn't have been contested a couple years ago. That's 56 candidates who can now knock on doors, lift turnout, be on message, hold extremists accountable, explain what's happening at State House. 50, that's all around the state. That's about 60% of the eligible races getting support from one effort. The point is, folks, we can do this in Ohio. I hope you consider joining if you're in Ohio, care about Ohio. We've also started these chapters in Missouri, in Tennessee, in Texas. There's a way to do it, and it's starting to grow here. And long term, let's keep building it. Let's get these numbers higher. If you want to join, we'd love to have you. If you want to help us in other states, we'd love to have that as well. Folks, this is how we win the long game for democracy, supporting great candidates running in more places, being real patriots running in tough places, and the rest of us showing that we hugely value what they're doing. Great news. Have a great week.
So that is a little, very small glimpse. So I've just sent David a slightly desperate email to make sure he's on his way. And we're going to riff a little bit. We're just going to kind of improvise here, hoping that he's on his way. The reason that we wanted to do this with David is because necessary trouble among the candidates, in addition to the battleground candidates, right, that we are working for and expecting to win, right? Jasmine Clark and Susie Greenberg, in addition to our work for them this year, we have had a dedicated team of volunteers working for something called the Fighting 50. And among the leadership of the Fighting 50 is our own Pam Woodley and our also own Bob Herndon, and who have also been working with Kimberlyn Carter, who is a longtime friend of Necessary Trouble, and Jake Fields. And what they have been doing has been recruiting 50 Democrats to run for those deep, deep red races. And so this is the first year that we're talking really very seriously about both working at the level of how we can flip the house, right? But also working at the level of how to have folks run in every single race, even if what their expectation is that they're not going to win, but they're going to build Democratic presence at that level. Our plan had been to talk about that next time, but I wonder, Pam Woodley and Bob Herndon, if you would be willing just to talk a little bit about what you guys have been doing.
Sure. Is Bob on?
I'm on, Pam.
Oh,
I got my goofy picture on, but if you want to, you're much better at it, Pam. Why don't you go ahead and talk, and I'll fill in anything afterwards.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, Bob and I have become great friends doing this. He's the people person and I'm the organized person. So yeah, the way this process worked, the way we found these candidates is by mass texting. We got lists of likely Democrats from the Democratic Party of Georgia, from this group called Contest Every Race. And we bought a texting program, mass texted hundreds of people in each district where we needed a Democrat to run. We focused on Georgia House for this time, not the Senate. And then the ones that seemed like likely prospects, we would do some research and call them. And we ended up, recruiting, I don't know, about 30 people. And then another 10 or so just showed up on their own that we had nothing to do with. So there are somewhere between 40 and 50 Democratic candidates for Georgia House in these red districts, which we defined as Biden got less than 40% in 2020, which means, so that's really too big of a gap to make up in one term. So it's pretty, I mean, if any of these people actually win, it would be amazing. There are a couple that will probably get close. A lot of them are really great people. They've thought about running for a long time, but they just needed to be asked. It's a very diverse group as far as, well, mainly a lot of African Americans and white Americans. I guess we probably have further to go on Asians and things like that. And so now that we've recruited them, we're focusing on how can we support them. And especially with all the talents of this group. So we're going to be talking more about that. We already have some members doing public speaking coaching with these candidates. Jennifer Conmeyer is on here, and she's been working with one of our candidates from Valdosta. And Sandra Menace has been working with a candidate from Lincolnton. And I know they found them really a joy to work with. Bob, so the reason Bob and I are very interested in what David is going to present is because David is getting these types of candidates money, and that is something we right now have no ability to do because we're just a bunch of volunteers. You know, once you accept money, you have to have a whole legal structure. So we are eager to see how he does that, because that would be the next step, is to recruit these guys and then be able to give them some money. Bob?
Thank you, Pam. You, as usual, you pretty much covered everything. I think this is our first cycle doing this, and so we are kind of making this up as we go along. We've got a website, thefighting50.org. The money aspect is important, and we're trying to work through the systems of 501c4 PAC. There's just been a lot of complexity of how much to give out to who and stuff like that. So we're learning a lot, and we really appreciate y'all's patience and understanding as we go through this first cycle, because our goal is to help these people move along and move up to competitive districts, and I think our big goal is to right now turn out to vote for 2024, but also John Ossoff is up for the race in 2026. And we really want to make sure that John Ossoff gets reelected. That's down the road. And then further down the road is helping regain the State House in 2030, so the maps can be redrawn to be less gerrymandered for Democrats. But we're learning as we go. Pam is great. We've got a good team together, but this is our first cycle, and we're making some mistakes and learning as we go.
Thank you, Bob and Pam. They have done an amazing job recruiting, really recruiting 35 Democrats to run in these races that are deep red races is so magnificent. And we are going to be doing next time, yes, Pat Reiner says, Pam, you should run. We all agree with that. One of the things that we're going to be doing next time is by the next meeting, we'll have identified some specific needs that these candidates have, and we will be coming to you guys to see what you're willing to do. Like I said, like Jennifer being willing to help with public speaking and Sandra Menes with public speaking, and we may need folks to help with particular issue-oriented folks. These are really green candidates, but it is a very, very, very exciting part of, I think, the necessary trouble work is not just working on those flippable districts, but kind of from the ground up to help build this. And I wonder if along this way, along this kind of line, Gareth Fenley, you are a troubler running in a really, really red House, a state Senate district. Would you just say a little something about why you're running?
Excuse me. Hello, I'm Gareth Fenley, and I'm running for choice. I'm running for democracy. And I'm running for tomorrow. And I chose to run in the Georgia State system. Can't talk. I need a speaking coach. Sandy Menace. I'm running in the district where I live here in Walton County and in Oconee County, Athens Clarke County, and also parts of Barrow and Gwinnett County. So Decula was mentioned earlier. Decula is in my district. And I'm going to be contacting voters throughout that district. I don't have a primary opponent because there are no other Democrats running against me. So my name is on the ballot now. It's very exciting as a first-time candidate to know people are opting in to vote for me. And I shall place my URL in the chat so that anybody who would like to sign up or support me with a contribution can do so. It's just garethfenley.com.
Great. Thank you, Gareth, and thank you so very much for running. And I wonder if Jennifer, if you would be willing to just unmute yourself and say a little bit about how, is Jennifer still on?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm here.
Oh, there
Yeah.
you are. Great. Would you just say a little bit about your experience in doing some of the speaking coaching?
Sure. I'm sorry, I can't right now. I can't show my picture, but I see all of you beautiful faces. Yeah, it's been a real pleasure. This is really a pilot, as Pam had said, and so I've had a couple of sessions coaching the candidate that I'm working with, Anissa, down from Valdosta, and it's really been a pleasure. She is so articulate and so committed and so passionate. So really, what I'm helping her with is kind of just streamlining and focusing her message, based on my experience in doing presentations. The part that I think that really we're going to need to, I think we can support these candidates if she, it's only an N of one. So, but I think it's really more about the issues and really getting clear about the talking points and also understanding what the opposition is putting forth. For instance, she's in an agricultural district. And she working in the school, she doesn't really have a sense of the issues for that particular population. So I think with our help, we can really help them get the content down and be able to strategize. Excuse my voice. Yeah, and I think we're also, the last thing I'll say is we're talking about bringing in a colleague of mine who has worked, Pete Weissman, who has worked in the political arena and is going to really help them, particularly around how do you handle objections, even in these small community sessions. What are some great ways to approach pushback And I think that's going to be a really good webinar. I think Pam, you're arranging that now, so that would be super. But it's been a great
I also,
opportunity. Yeah, go on. I'm sorry.
oh, I was just gonna say, and on that same session, I think we're gonna have Carolyn Bordeaux coach them on how to ask for money, because I know from personal experience, she got very good at that.
She
So,
did.
yeah, even though their situation is a lot different, you know, they don't have to do call time every night and things like that. We'll be happy if they raise $2,000, we'd be thrilled. But still, just that ability to ask people for money, that's a hard thing. And especially if you're in a race, you're probably going to lose. So they need help with that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Pam, and thank you, Jennifer, for that great work. Karen Davenport, do you have your hand up?
I do. I was going to ask Bob if he could expound a little bit about what Peach Power Pack is and what they're doing.
Bob, you're muted. Are you still there?
I'm traveling on my way to somewhere, and it's the uh the Peach Power Pack is a subset of the Represent Georgia Network, Georgia Action Network, and they raise money to support candidates in municipal races. They gave out significant amount of money last cycle to candidates in red districts like ourselves, that what the Peach Power Pack is focused on. And they've also given out significant amount of money to candidates in municipal races. So donations to the Peach Power Pack, if you go to the peachpowerpack.org, you'll be able to see what they're focused on. And it's what you all have been talking about, supporting candidates in areas that are not supported by other places or less supported. And it's been around for about a year and a half, and they are focused on helping candidates all over the state of Georgia.
Dr. Fisher, lovely to have you with us.
Thank you so much. It's good to see you too, Becky, and everybody else that's here. I just want to make sure that we recognize that the May situation is really challenging. And Gwinnett, as you know, is a powerhouse. And we've been focused laser-like since December on the incumbents who are Black and first-time Democrat passed in the 2020 cycle, when we were identifying people by their party affiliation. So now that the governor has done all this shenanigans with everything is now nonpartisan, it's so confusing for voters in May that we made sure that we have had forums that focus, virtual forums, because our website reaches about 1.5 million people who actually follow us on the Gwinnett Democratic Women website. And what we've been doing is having them be forum guests, the incumbents primarily, but some new candidates as well. But the incumbents need as much help to let them have a platform that they can talk about what they've done in office and what they plan to continue to do and why they're running again. So this is as important, if not more so, because it's right now. It's May. This isn't the fall. We've got to concentrate on making sure that these people are reelected, not just Black Democrats, but all the incumbents who were elected in 2020. But there's a particular targeting by the Republicans on those Black representatives who are there, and we know it and we feel it. And we're trying to do everything we can to stop it. Thanks.
That's fantastic. Dr. Fisher has been doing amazing, amazing work. Dr. Fisher, would you put the website, the donation link, especially for the Gwinnett Women
Sure
Democrats? And that would be
Will do.
wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the Fighting 50 website is in the chat also. I think so. At our next meeting, we might be doing some very targeting recruitment for the Fighting 50. In terms of support for them. But if you would like to be involved in the planning around that, or if there's any particular skill set that you would like to offer and place forward, just please put your name in the chat and we will circle back to you. I think what we're going to do at this point, since I think we are probably going to end up hearing from David Pepper at next session instead of this, unless he has been, unless he thinks we're on Mountain Time, which is a possibility. We're going to do a little adjusting in terms of agenda. I want to kind of switch. We're still talking about elections, but I want to switch gears just for a moment. But before we do, I want to really acknowledge the great work that has been going on. I want to acknowledge the great work Dr. Fisher is doing in Gwinnett County. I want to acknowledge the great work that Pam Woodley and Bob Herndon are doing with the Fighting 50. We will hear more about that. I want to acknowledge the great work that Gareth Fenley is doing in running for office, and Dominique Cooper is doing in running for office too. So great gratitude for all of you. This is what democracy looks like. Thank you all. We appreciate you. And I think what we're going to do is while we wait for Teddy to join us, we're going to do the updates, the Troubler updates about May work, about work that can be done right now. And as Dr. Fisher reminds us, we are in the middle of an election. So also work that people can sign up to do to support the candidates that we have been, that we as the Necessary Trouble have lined up behind, Representative Dr. Jasmine Clark and Susie Greenberg. So, and we're going to switch to those updates. And so if we can start, Pam Wuichet, are you giving will you facilitate this next little process here?
I am happy to, and I hope that others will join in because, in fact, we only have like 3 updates that we're going to do because, in fact, we did really want to focus most of the time, given the 2 speakers that we still that we had scheduled for this meeting and everything. But the first one is very election oriented, and I am sort of facilitating on behalf of Pam Woodley and Naomi Bach, who are co-leading the team of volunteers, canvassing volunteers for Susie Greenberg, and Tara Doyle and Robert Brown, who are co-leading the team for Jasmine Clark. And they wanted you to know that the first canvassing that for this specific session and everything will actually be next Saturday, May the 11th. That will be for Susie. They're going to alternate the weeks between Susie and Jasmine. And the first announcement for that went out yesterday. And you should have gotten that if, in fact, you had already volunteered from Karen McCown. If you have already volunteered, great. And whether, in fact, you're going to come out next Saturday or you're going to be coming in future Saturdays and such, if you've got that, you don't need to sign up again. However, always need more people with boots on the ground and such there. So if you did not get that announcement and you are interested in volunteering to canvass door to door, even if you can't do it next Saturday, if you want to do it you just want to be added to the list to get the announcements and everything, please put your name into the chat. Also, for this, if you have volunteered before, you realize that we've used minivan in order to guide the door to door so that you're knocking on the doors that are the most important for those candidates in those districts and such there. So Karen McCown, again, great, did a Zoom meeting yesterday that was a training session on that. And so some of you may have signed up already for that. If not, there's another session which is going to be on June the 23rd, which will be at Tara Doyle's house. And again, that will give you another opportunity to come in on that. So again, and I speak on this one in that I love canvassing. So, and it is, I think, one of the highest rated things in terms of getting votes. So one of the most powerful impacts that you can have is going out, and it only takes like a couple of hours of each of these Saturdays that you're doing. So after that, so with that update, if there is anything, because I know that Pam Woodley at least is on this call, and Tara is on this call as well. So if you have anything to add, please jump in. And if not, I will move on to Kate King.
It looks like Karen has something to add.
Oh,
Pam.
Karen, yes,
Comment.
Okay.
If you're volunteering for canvassing, again, if you got the invitation yesterday, you are already on the list and you don't need to sign up again. I'm seeing some people, though, wanting to volunteer, which is wonderful. You put your email in the chat. The email that somebody can be paired. I really don't think it would take more than an hour, most of them. We're gonna meet at 10 o'clock. And because of Karen, everyone's gonna be ready to go. So you will be home for lunch. And it's not that hot yet.
This is very true. You will be prepared to go out here. If Karen is doing the list and everything for going out. Anyway,
And Tara also.
Tara?
Also wanted to just make it clear that Jasmine decided she wants to focus on postcarding. And so we're not starting until the end of June. So
Okay.
someone, for instance, Vicky just said, I can't do it the next few Saturdays, not a problem. We'll need you in June. We'll need you in July. We'll need you in August. So just this is why Susie's getting a head start, but Jasmine really wants to focus on postcarding first, which is always great because when you knock on a door, somebody says, oh, I already got that postcard. So that's a nice sort of boost, if you will, before you do boots on the ground.
And that is an amazing segue to the next lead who's going to report, which is Kate King about postcarding.
Yes, that is a perfect segue. And Pam, you also give me a perfect segue, which is you love canvassing. It's very effective. But if you don't love canvassing, as I don't, postcarding is also very effective. And I want to thank, first of all the people who have already picked up postcards for Susie. We have, thousands of postcards already out there, many of which have been mailed. And thank you. That's great. But we still have some more. So there are postcards available to write for Susie in the cooler at Becky and Pat's house. There will soon, as Tara said, be postcards for Jasmine. So no shortage of postcards. If you're getting my emails, you don't need to put your name in the chat again. If you are not getting them, please do put your information in the chat and I'll add you to my list. Hopefully we're going to have postcard parties. That hasn't shaped up yet, but I think it will, where we can all get together and socialize as we write postcards. So again, put your name in the chat if you want to get those emails, and we'll just keep charging ahead with the postcards.
Hey, Pam, I know that we have one more. Rosaia was going to give us a little update on Gareth Fenley's, and I have just noticed that David Pepper has joined us. So, David, thank you very much for joining us. You are a champion. We have, let me catch you up on and Rosaia, I promise we will circle back to you, and thank you, Gareth. David, we did a lot of improvising while you were gone. And this is, let me give you a little update of where we are. I actually played the first 3 minutes. You had sent out a wonderful brief description a few weeks ago, or a couple of weeks ago, about like a little why state legislatures matter and a little bit about Blue Ohio. We played that and talked a little bit about our equivalent in Georgia, which is not the financial part, but our effort with largely this group of trying to recruit candidates to run in red districts. And so I hope you don't mind if I don't repeat your introduction. It was glowing and talked about what a big impact you've had on us. And what I would say is that we asked David to talk about 3 things in particular. And one was a little bit about why it matters to run candidates in Democrats in every district. A little bit about the Blue Ohio model of funding, and most critical for us at this point in our development, what kind of support you can give these candidates aside from financial, since so many of them are first time running. And if you would just go ahead and take it from here, David, thank you and welcome to Necessary Trouble again. Happy to have you back.
Thank you. I am so sorry to be late. I'm embarrassed by that, but hopefully didn't lose anybody and we can cover the ground we wanted to cover, and I'll be on as long as we need. Let me get my dog out of this office real quick. I'll be right back. You know, the first question is been kind of hidden for some time. You know, why every district? Why not leave a lot empty because they seem like we can't win them? People, some even worse, have suggested it's a waste of time and money to even try. And I think we're learning that we've tried this approach now of leaving many uncontested. It's a disaster. It's a disaster. All around the country, at the state house level, most of the extremism is actually being accomplished through the rural red districts of this country. That's where it's happening. That's where Dobbs comes from. That's where the worst laws in Georgia come from. That's where that's where the legislators that kicked the 2 Justins out of Tennessee live, and that's where they have their power. And if all we do is run for federal office and mainly focus on swing areas, and we never touch the districts that they are exercising power from, we can win every race that we try and win, and they will still keep doing exactly what they're doing. And they'll do it without accountability, which makes it worse. Yes, some of these districts are very hard to win. Some are very badly gerrymandered. That's frustrating. It's painful. But my contention is, and I think it's proving itself, unfortunately, there's far more damage being done in districts that are one-sided, but the damage goes a lot further when we don't run at all than when we actually bring some accountability to those districts. When we don't run at all, when people pretty much know they don't have an election, when in some states the election itself is canceled, literally in Texas they canceled them, the warping that does to these politicians is, I think it's hard to sort of imagine until you really think through it. Think about how different their mindset is as a politician when they have no general election, which has been the case in many, many parts of our country. Public outcomes no longer have any impact on whether or not they get reelected. So if they, deliver the worst outcomes imaginable, they still are back. That's a really dangerous disconnect. Being mainstream is no longer something that gets you ahead in politics. It actually could get you behind, because if you're a mainstream person and all you face is a Republican primary, that's probably why you're going to lose. So they have this terrible incentive to be extreme. They also have a terrible incentive to keep attacking democracy, because if they're an extremist and they have terrible public outcomes, any fair district means they would lose the next election. So they keep gerrymandering. They keep suppressing the vote. So when we don't run at all, the system of incentives they feel to stay in office are the opposite of what we would think of public service is. When we run, even if we don't beat them, we start to change that. We start to have them realize, man, some of my neighbors aren't happy. They're mad that in Ohio, for example, the law I passed forced a 10-year-old rape victim to have to go to Indiana for treatment, or what happened in Texas. If we don't run, they don't even have that conversation. They don't have a debate in front of a newspaper ed board about why they voted for that extreme law, on and on. There's more awareness. When there's no one running, there's no awareness even of who these people are. And so when we start to run, we start to over time change this downward spiral of extremism that is resulting when basically, almost like the Jim Crow South, there's no democracy in too many of these places. When we do run, what happens is a positive, whether or not we win, and you're going to win in some of these, but either way, you lift turnout because you're knocking on doors, you lift transparency, you have people carrying the message that otherwise isn't even in that district, not just a message on television from, Joe Biden's campaign, but a message from a local Democrat. So all these things happen when we run. So yeah, we have to run everywhere, and we have to see that there's a value. And the other big thing, and this, you'll face this if you talk about running everywhere, the other big thing to think about is some people want to respond as if it's a zero-sum game. Well, if we run everywhere, we're undermining our effort to win at the federal level. No, we're not at all. In fact, I'd argue that it's better for Joe Biden if every single district in Georgia has a candidate. That will lift turnout for him. That's almost an auxiliary field campaign. It was much harder for Stacey Abrams to run for governor when 42% of Georgia's districts, the Republicans, didn't have an opponent. She's got to fill that gap. You have an energized volunteer base and some support going to candidates in every district of Arizona or Georgia or Wisconsin. That lifts the higher level. It's not zero sum. It's actually complementary. And so the whole mindset that we shouldn't do this because it takes away, I think, is actually the wrong mindset. So that's some of the reasons to run everywhere. Blue Ohio, why don't people run everywhere? Because we have literally sent a signal for a generation that if you're running in a tough place and it's not for some federal office, we have kind of sent a message that we don't think that matters. In fact, like I said, in some cases we've sent a message we think it's a waste. But that's what people say in DC. Why are you wasting your time on that? Well, who's going to run if they're told by their own party that running is a waste or not valued? They're not going to run. And so one of my missions is that we all have to collectively, through dollars, through volunteer support, through the words we use, show people that we greatly value them running for these offices. We don't run away from them because they're running for a district that hasn't even had competition for two or three elections. We actually embrace them, more robustly and thank them. Like the minute they start running, we should be saying to them, wow, your public service has already begun. You're doing something enormous for democracy by even running. You're knocking on doors that haven't even been knocked on. You're improving the voter file and cleaning up by doing that, right? I mean, you're on message. Your opponent doesn't get to claim credit for a Joe Biden infrastructure plan that your opponent opposed, but no one knows it if you're not there running. Because you're running, you could point out that became because of Democrats. So I think we have to value that. And the thing we've done with Blue Ohio that we're trying to expand elsewhere is Blue Ohio was an organization I helped create based on a model in Missouri that basically has taken about 1,000 people over the last couple of years. We've created a community where every month we meet, but most importantly, every month, every single person gives 10 or 15 or 20 bucks a month. And that amount of money we actually give out to candidates starting in the hardest districts up to say, we value your run so much, and we understand that you don't get your calls returned versus the other more glamorous campaigns. So our first checks go to you, and we build up we think of it as a bathtub. We build up from the bottom. And what's amazing is it's actually working incredibly well. Last week, we gave out candidate support to 56 Ohio candidates. I don't think any organization in Ohio is doing that. Democratic candidates for the state house. Not one penny goes to anything but the candidates. That's a promise that gets people more excited about giving. The combined contributions that these candidates prior to our checks going out had together was just over $100,000, $120,000. After we sent out our checks, the combined total of these candidates was $400,000. We literally took them together from just over 120 to 400. Some candidates received checks of $5,000 or $6,000. We will be by far their biggest supporters. This isn't me writing these checks. It's 1,000 people doing it every month. And it shows you that if you create a core group of people, you got to get into the mid hundreds up to 1,000. But those dollars add up in a way that we are starting to provide really meaningful help to people who otherwise literally could do 6 hours of call time like they're told to do and raise $100 because no one values it. So Blue Ohio is something we're very excited about, and I'll just put a link if you want to look at it. And I'm gonna put a link to my Substack that explains it as well. And if anyone's interested in this stuff, follow me generally. I almost never have a paywall, so it's a lot of sort of free stuff. Now, in addition to financial support, this is the third. So that's second. That's Blue Ohio. Why is Blue Ohio so important? Because there are actually other organizations. And I put this in my second book. The good news is, more than I appreciated when I wrote my first book, there are a lot of organizations that are actually doing some of the work in tougher areas far more than, let's say, happened 5 or 10 years ago. There are organizations that are doing recruiting. There are organizations that are doing training. Things like that. And that's all great and really important. There's organizations that are doing staffing training and embed staff into campaigns. All that's really important. But the biggest gap I saw was, well, all that's great, but no one will give anyone any money. You can't do anything. So that's why Blue Ohio comes along and says, we're here with some support. But that's not the only thing you need to win, obviously. I think the training is really important. Here's the link that describes it. There's a video. There's sort of a description of what I just went through. So what else do they need? They do need training. They need ways to make sure when they do raise money, it's spent well. There are groups doing that. There need, recruiting in districts that haven't had a candidate in several campaigns is not easy. So the recruiting organizations are helpful. But what I'd say to a group like this is, as much as anything, they just need to have a sense that we all see the enormous value of them running. when they call us, they hear words from us that they literally thank them for being patriots or public servants as candidates. Not they're doing public service whether or not they win. It's that they're running, and the really exciting ones maybe run again. They keep doing it. They feel excitement just by the run. We can add that all the time, and if you add in volunteer support, if you add in, you have a event for let's say you have an event for someone, well, invite them along, introduce them. Maybe you do have an event for them. Whatever it is to wrap them with the value that we place in these races that we just haven't been communicating at all until recently. The more we do that, the better. The final thing I'll close on, Becky, and then go to questions is the really good news is this sort of sense that the old model of leaving half these races uncontested is a disaster. This sense of that is really taking hold. Since I wrote this book, Saving Democracy, where I present this chart of how many districts have been uncontested, there's been a real push from a lot of Democratic leaders, Jamie Harris included, state chairs, local chairs, and we have seen a dramatic decline even in the last 2 years of uncontested races. North Carolina went from 30 uncontested races in 2022. They're down to 2 this year. Florida, I just sent out a tweet about an hour ago. They had far too many uncontested. They're down to 6 uncontested, and they've still got several weeks to go. Arkansas, Texas. So the good news is that it's happening. And, once you do that, of course, then you have the question of, is there support for these folks and others? But that's a good problem to have. And my goal is long-term to really sort of use this new mindset that it's unacceptable. It's an unacceptable business as usual that people are not running half these places. And then my hope is once people start doing it, we can follow with the infrastructure that they need. One little data point, someone sent me this the other day about Florida. There were literally 7 or 8 uncontested congressional races in Florida and 20 or so uncontested state house races in Florida in the year 2000 when Al Gore lost by 500 votes. Think about that. I guarantee you he would have won. 8 uncontested congressional races. That's shocking. 20 state house. We know that a candidate running in a district lifts turnout by about 1%. We know if they get support, they lift it by another 1%. That's the election right there. We cannot make that mistake again. The good news is there is momentum around this. Like I said, we just have to keep pushing. And then never forget that it's a failed business as usual. And every single time we raise the bar on less uncontested races, the next cycle, we have even less, and we just keep going from there. So I'll stop talking and happy to take any questions that folks have. I think I covered your 3 questions.
Beautiful, David. Thank you so much. Here's a couple of questions from Karen Davenport, and let me just invite other folks to put their questions in the chat. A couple of questions from Karen. Do the funds go directly to the candidate, and are there guidelines about how they spend them, or is it up to let's just start with those. Do they go directly to the candidate, and are there guidelines about how they spend the money, or is it up to them?
They all go into, I'm gonna shut this door again. I don't want to have other noise. So what we do is we create a pack in each state. We have these, by the way, in Tennessee now. We have one in Texas, Missouri, and Ohio. What we do is we create a pack in each state. And the money comes into the pack, and then the pack gives it out to the candidates, which does limit us to whatever total amount a candidate can get from a pack. But, if I'm maxing out 12,000 per candidate in Ohio and it's going to 50 candidates, I'm pretty happy. So that's a pretty high ceiling. I think your limit in Georgia is a little bit lower. So our goal is to create a baseline across the state. Our goal is not to create some complex process. So we are on the phone. We want to send these people to the training that's out there. We want to spend it well. But the truth is, in some of these places, this is literally the gas money that allows them to go door to door, because we're talking about very poorly funded campaigns, or it's the most basic literature. And so it really is not a one size fits all. And it really will depend on the campaign. You know, if someone, I see Jennifer's question, you know, if someone's got, you know, $25,000, that's when I start saying, well, there may be some targeted digital that would be worth doing. Don't waste it on TV. That's not enough. That could be some mail. If it's lower, it's literally just flyers to get to doors. So, but we're not talking about the higher level spending. By the way, one of the, I don't know if I could share my screen or not. I think I can. One of the benefits of this, to go back through a couple things, is this is money. It's sorry to go so fast here, but I'm finding a slide. This is money that goes so much further at this level. You know, if you took the $300,000 we gave out, and as much as I support Share Brown, I'm helping other ways. That's a rounding error of a television buy in Ohio, just like it would be for your Senate candidates. You take that same $300,000 and you're filling to the brim candidates. You're 80% of their budget. And what they're doing, this is the difference between, like I said, lit or no lit or something else. So the money goes a lot further once you just split it up. This is sort of my left is my sort of hypothetical celebrity style Senate race, saying that if you took 10% of the budget of Amy McGrath, let's say when she ran for Mitch McConnell's seat, tried to beat him, which was an exciting race, she raised a lot of money. But if you took 10% of that and put it into state house races, you would have people running who wouldn't have run otherwise, and you'd be supporting most of their campaigns. One other slide, real quick, just so you can see what I'm talking about. When I talk about this, is not just an eye test. I hope you could see it. It's also this is the 2022 uncontested races in these states. So you'll see, you know, Tennessee 49% uncontested. Georgia in this one was 53% uncontested Republicans. Look at the millions of people who simply had no choice. Texas, you know, towards the bottom, 42%, 12 million people faced a canceled state house election. So that's the status quo that I believe is so failing us, because it's in those districts in these states where their incentive is to be an extremist, and it's from these collective districts that most of the damage being done on democracy is happening. It's not Mike Johnson in Congress. Look at Congress, almost nothing even happens. It's these states and these districts. And so when we don't run anywhere like these, it's literally a green light to do it, all the things they're doing. And even if we win our federal goals like we did in 2020 with your enormous wins on January 5th, if we don't change this chart, even when we win, they're still doing all the things they want to do, and it's working. And that's why but the good news is I got to update this thing. In 24, people are catching on to it. And it's one of the reasons I'm hopeful for a lot of reasons. But one reason is that we are seeing more candidates. It's very humbling. I've had a number of people tell me, hey, I'm running because I read your book or I heard you give a presentation. And there are a lot of other, you know, the new chair of the North Carolina Democratic Party did an incredible job recruiting there. So there are a lot of people out there pushing to do this.
David, Beth Levine is asking, what are the common concerns that potential candidates express about running?
I mean, one, I think, you know, in very red areas, there's fear. Obviously, you'll probably hear that from people. And that's a legitimate thing to think about. How do you campaign in this very sort of heated climate? That may mean it's not for everybody. You really can't, if you're truly worried in that way, it may be too hard to run. But there's also ways to be smart. You know, when I was a candidate for city council back in the day, I knocked on every door. I didn't care if you were a hard right Republican or a Democrat. Now these days, I wouldn't recommend that. I think knocking on doors, like don't show up at the door that you think might be the person that's truly hostile. Use the door to get your turnout up. Don't try to persuade a Trump voter at the door if it's a complete stranger. So there are ways to deal with that. But I think more broadly, it's, will there be support? How do I do it? And also the sense, and this is very common, you know, I used to try and recruit candidates a lot. I can't do that job of the state house. And my number one answer would be, I'm sure yours, are you looking at the Republican majority, the individuals? they are far more qualified than someone who's been a teacher in their community for years, or a nurse, or just a community leader. And I think a lot of times people, I always face this when I ran, like people just don't, they just think there's some high threshold that they don't meet. And often they're way over the threshold. They just don't realize it. But the good news is, as part of this sort of movement, I've met some wonderful people who clearly have overcome that hurdle and figured out that, no, I'd be a good state rep, and I'd be better than the goofball who's sitting there now, who has no experience, doesn't understand most of their constituents, and so much of what it takes to be a good candidate and office holder is just someone who's out there, knows the community, and pays attention to how individual people live their lives. Other questions?
Yeah, Pam Woodley has several. Let me start with, has word spread about the availability of this funding so that recruiting Dems has gotten easier in Ohio? Has it made recruitment easier?
What's funny is the best, besides me just being a very noisy person, the best recruiting, the best spreading the word has been from our members. My executive director, when I led the Ohio Democratic Party, had someone knock on their door last year about our Issue 1 reproductive freedom campaign. And this person could tell that my former executive director was very politically savvy. And she said to him, hey, you really are smart politically. I'm part of a group called Blue Ohio. You should run for the state house. We'll support you. And he said, oh, I used to work for David Pepper. I know the program. But the point is, in her mind, she was literally trying to recruit someone, and she was already willing to say, we'll help. So one of the things we did, by the way, we would join up with our official Democratic House caucus on Zoom calls. We have one every month. And I would have him share the districts that they were targeting and put it to my group. And then we'd send an email to 1,000 people saying, make sure you're looking around wherever you are for candidates. And some people ran because of that. So yeah, there is a general sense that it's valued. Our members recruit, but here's the other thing that helps, and I can say this having, again, been at the party. One of the hard things, if you're, let's say, the position Stacey Abrams used to have, the leader of the minority caucus, okay, or let's say the minority caucus. One of the hardest parts about that job is most of your money will go to the swingiest seats, to pick up those seats. So when you're recruiting, you kind of know those really hard districts, you're not going to have a lot for them. So we're their best friend, because they can say to the person they're recruiting, hey, there's a group out there that we know about that will help you get support. And so we also become an ally to the formal Democratic caucus that's also recruiting. And that way they're not stuck being accused later of empty promises that, hey, they recruited someone and a month after the primary, that person got a $6,000 check from Blue Ohio. So it also helps them recruit better as well. So no, I think there's sort of a wraparound value of these races that comes from what we're doing.
Great. And David, once they are running, does Blue Ohio, or do you do anything to create a sense of community around them, among them? Or is your job solely focused on the funding?
We have a monthly call where they're all welcome. And we'll put them on a call with, 100, 120, 100 something people. And we'll let them present who they are, not all of them, but over the course of the thing, because the people in Blue Ohio love meeting the candidates. And then we will literally throw out there, tell us how we can help. We'll put their link up if there's an event up. Oftentimes I'm tweeting about them. I met one of our candidates the other day. I immediately said, give me your, tweet me whenever you want me to. So we're trying to do that. And like I said, we want to connect them up. We're going to have a call in a few weeks, sort of a boot camp. Now, again, they have access to the party's training. So there are already things that are helpful. We make sure that they know about those things. But we're also going to, based on a few conversations I had, I'm going to put together a sort of a fundraising 101, connect them to the voter file if they haven't gotten it. Again, there are multiple entry points to that type of thing now. But we try and make it more than just a check. That obviously is helpful, but not sufficient. So, but our whole description, on the very sort of wonky side, someone would say what we're doing is crowdfunding, right? That's kind of what we're doing, but we don't put it that way. Our term is we've created a community. Our community is here to support people running everywhere. And these candidates are now part of our community, and they join our calls, they present, and we hope to help them in all the ways that they need help, whether they ask for it or that we think the help would be in the end a lift to them.
Great. And do you have a paid staff person? Do you need a paid staff person to manage Blue Ohio, or does that end up being you?
I'm sort of the noise of it. What the beauty of Blue Ohio is that a number of years ago, an organization that is sort of the back office work of this created the technology that allows us to do what is the complicated part, which is, well, how do you file reporting for 1,000 monthly contributions that then go out as many contributions? How do you keep up with all that, with reporting all that to the Secretary of State of Ohio? That's the complicated part. Now, the good news is that back end process existed before I created Blue Ohio with the group that created Blue Missouri. They generally are being paid to do that basic work through tips that are made from contributions, and we do raise some money to that sort of, I think it's technically a nonprofit, or maybe it's a federal PAC that allows them to do the work. The Blue Ohio PAC, though, at this point is 100%. The money goes right to the candidates. But that work, and I don't get paid anything for it, but the great people that do that back end work, there is a group that does that we raise some money for, and they also benefit from tips that are given by contributors.
Great, thank you. And maybe this might end up being the last question here. One of the things that has been a little challenging in the past, we've done a whole lot better this year, but when Contest Every Race was kind of just fishing blindly for anybody to run, sometimes we got some really kooky Democratic candidates. So I'm sure that happens in other states. Does it happen in Ohio? And if so, do you end up funding them the same way you would fund more dedicated candidates, any differentiation? How do you handle that?
I mean, if someone truly is off the walls kooky, then you'd have that conversation. For the most part, our goal is to say we are creating a funding floor across the state, that everywhere in Ohio if you are running and you make it through your primary, and these are the people who've made it, we don't support them before the primary, but that we want to have a funding floor that's lifting everybody. And yeah, there are moments where, and oftentimes the candidates who are most disorganized haven't even done the basics of putting together the committee that allows them to do that. So obviously there's some basic vetting like that, but overall, like, our goal is to actually have it be that in Ohio, right now it's in everything I talk about, is, if you've read my books, you've seen this, is about building a long game. So right now we have 1,000 members. I want 2,000 members and 3,000 members. My goal is to lead long-term to the business as usual in Ohio, is that wherever you're running in Ohio, no matter how difficult, you're starting off with the minimum contribution you're allowed to get. The maximum individual contribution. You're starting off with $12,000 or $13,000. It's just there for you. It's almost like a public financing, but it's from this group. And to me, that long-term sort of establishing that as a principle is how you're going to really get people to run everywhere. They know that. By the way, there's a great group out of Arizona that I'm going to highlight in one of my Substacks, where they do have public financing in Arizona. They have to meet certain criteria. They've been working really hard, and they now have a bunch of candidates running in very tough places who will all get public funding. So in a way, this is almost creating a public funding model where it doesn't exist. It's paid for by everyday Ohioans who believe enough in the need to run everywhere that they're putting their money where their mouth is.
That's great. David, thank you very much. Thank you for your extraordinary work. Can we just give David a little appreciation here? David, thank you for
Sorry, I was late again, by the way.
It is fine. We love you. We have been dramatically influenced by you, and I'm sure that will continue. And we appreciate your work, not just in Ohio, but nationwide, and really appreciate your relationship with Necessary Trouble, and we just
love it.
are always your biggest fans. So thank
Can I
you.
say one thing? I see Tracy Fisher has a quick question on messaging. I agree completely. And we had actually Rachel Bittakofer on our last call. You may know about her for messaging, sharing messaging advice. I am actually potentially creating a tool, to Tracy Fisher's question, a very easy to use tool, so all these candidates have a very simple messaging tool that allows them to address the biggest issues in their communities. So I agree that giving them good messaging is another really easy way to help candidates running. And the harder the district, the more that can be helpful, because some of the things that that people may be running on in blue areas aren't the things that'll be a good sales pitch in a red area. So that kind of messaging can be especially helpful. You know, what issues to focus on, like the universal vouchers they're trying in places like Georgia, some of the other things they're doing wrong. We're going to give them that information as well.
And not just hopefully messaging, but exposure. There's so much that has to be done media-wise to get these people's faces, the candidates and the incumbents, and their faces out, because people do not know who they are. They don't know what they're running for. And that is very significant in terms of all the communities that I've at least had some dealings with.
Yeah.
So you're right about, I really support what you said about your approach, but it needs to be multi-pronged, because just having a candidate, as Becky said, we got some wonky ones. We don't want the wonky, we want the right. So, and the left. I should have said the left. Thank you.
And one thing, like I said, it's a long game, but I agree. The first thing we do is start to create a different expectation. We run everywhere. And as we do that, I also think filling in, once you have candidates running everywhere, we need more staff that are trained. We need more messaging tools. But over time, I agree, we have to do all that.
David, thank you
Thanks
so very
again.
much. Really appreciate it. And David, if it's okay, we are going to keep in touch with you about how to support these candidates as they go forward, because it sounds like you're doing some wonderful, coming up with some wonderful tools and techniques to help them.
I'll share this messaging thing as we work on it if people are interested.
That would be wonderful. And Karen Davenport is actually going to introduce our next speaker, who it just so happens is in a different role now, but was the director of the House Democratic Caucus. So I know that this is a nice area of overlap. And before we go there, Karen, can I turn this over to you to introduce Teddy Smyth?
Yes, thank you so much. And we do know that Teddy Smyth is here. I've pronounced his name correctly today. We are excited. He has done tons of different things in the field of campaign management, organizing training director, Southern Regional GLTV desk, and on and on and on. But we're excited that he's here today. And he has a new role as General Election Director for the Georgia campaign for Biden-Harris. And we're just excited. He's going to speak with us about some plans for the presidential campaign in Georgia and how the national campaign will be constructed to strengthen the Democratic Party of Georgia for work to be done in 2024 and beyond. Teddy?
Thank you, Karen, for the kind introduction. And hey, Becky, I appreciate seeing you on this call and many friends. And thank you, David, for your expertise. And I just, so much of what he just said resonated so deeply. So I'm glad that y'all are able to hear from him as well. My name is Teddy Smyth. I'm the General Election Director for the Democratic Party this year, for the Biden campaign, the Harris campaign, the coordinated campaign. Democrats at every single level of the ballot, we must elect Democrats. We must be working to flip the state house, working to flip the state senate, preparing for 2026. You know, our eyes must be on taking the governor's mansion and reelecting Senator Ossoff. And I say all that to say that, yes, oh my goodness, Joe Biden, but it's a lot more than that. And you know that, and I know that deeply. I'm a huge fan of Necessary Trouble, so I'm honored to be here again with you in this new role. As Karen mentioned, I used to be at the House Caucus, the Georgia House Democrats. Now I'm on the campaign. And I joined the campaign for so many reasons, but namely, this is just such a brilliant opportunity for us to build something that is true to Georgia, that honors and lifts up every single one of our experiences working as a collective team to elect Democrats. And that, I mean, it's a big national campaign, right? And we're going to invest a ton of national resources and state resources in Georgia. And I feel personally like I must be part of making sure that that money is invested in a way that helps us and that lasts beyond one cycle, because this is truly about turning Georgia blue yet again. We've done it before, so we will do it yet again, but keeping it blue as well. I've been on the campaign for a couple weeks, so apologies if I'm a little bit more scattered with how I would frame this. Y'all are also an interesting audience because I'm trying to be, I hope to be pretty transparent, in fact, with what our path is, how we're thinking about things, what's new this year, and what are points that we're still learning, figuring out. And so throughout this year, I'll put my name in the chat at some point, but I would welcome and love your direct feedback to me or other members as we staff up to our team to make sure we're truly holding true to all the things I'm about to say that we very much value. Okay, so strategy, I want to talk about this. President Biden, he knows how to win locally. He is he came up as a city council member fighting against big oil companies. He's a local guy, a Pennsylvania guy and Delaware guy. And he deeply wants to hear from people who are talking with voters. He cares about the voter level experience, individuals, what people are actually feeling, seeing, talking about, hurting. What's hard, what's difficult, what's working. And y'all know it, but the stakes this year could not be higher. People have sort of forgotten this. Not us, not the people in this room, but generally the Georgia public has sort of tried to black out the whole Trump years. They were so bad that like we don't want to hear from him anymore. We don't want to think about him. They're like, oh, these two guys again? And that's not it at all. Like once you remember how bad it was and how bad it's going to be, and folks remember what the stakes are in this election, the contrast does immense work. And so part of the role of the campaign and us is to paint Trump and MAGA as unacceptably extreme for America, to remind folks of what the Trump years were like. I'm going to talk about a few things, just by the way, a path to victory, and then I want to talk a little bit about message and issues and sort of how we're thinking about that, what's resonating. I'll talk about our organizing program and long-term impact, and then I'll try to save as much time for questions. So apologies if I speak quickly. Okay, path to victory. Persuasion. The name of the game this year is we need to talk with people who are on the fence about voting, on the fence about voting for Biden, on the fence about any number of things, and convince them to vote for Joe Biden. This includes a bunch of folks who are demoralized right now, who aren't really feeling it, who haven't necessarily understood the impact of some of the good legislation, or just haven't felt it, right? Like it's hard to translate and you're just living your life. You're not thinking about this stuff that much. And so persuading people and telling a story is going to be so important. Early right now, I think our top priority is scaling our campaign's infrastructure, which looks like hiring and increasing the campaign's presence, visibility, opening offices. President Biden loves offices, notably, man after my own heart. And so we are going to be visible and in person. This is a change from 2020 and 22 even, where we campaigned during COVID, right? Like we couldn't be in person. And so this is a shift back to a lot of what the Obama era organizing looked like and felt like, particularly in terms of being in communities, showing up and being visible. So opening offices, generating enthusiasm, organizing our key coalitions intentionally, engaging partners, allies, and protecting the vote. Y'all know it, but Kemp and his cronies have done everything in their power to suppress the vote. We'll continue to. And so we'll have a big voter protection team. I hope you'll get involved with them as well. Yeah, because we've got to do a lot to ensure that people can exercise that right to vote. Even now in 2024, which is bonkers, but that's the place we're in. I want to share just a couple of slides. We're going to have a training series starting on Monday. I'll also put a link at some point. Whoa, that didn't work. Give me half a second, sorry. Oh. You know what? I'm not going to share my slides because it's a little bit chaotic and it's not working immediately. But suffice it to say, and I'll put this link in the chat now, we're going to be doing a training series starting tomorrow, and this will be something that we do more and more of, about storytelling in particular, because we found that the most persuasive way to earn somebody's vote, to connect with somebody who's on the fence, is storytelling, is listening first, to be honest, like really listening, hearing, and then connecting your personal story, their story perhaps, with what Joe and Kamala have accomplished and what Democrats are accomplishing, and telling them we probably need to finish the job. You know, the work continues. Yeah, I think that's what I'll say on storytelling briefly. But more to come on that. Storytelling is key. I want to talk about message though. Voters are like pretty rational. They're thinking about like life and expenses and maybe their rights and maybe they hear a little bit of the news, but they're not really thinking about Trump. Like even the news coverage of Trump is no longer showing him as much. They like summarize and they're like, oh, he lied and said this or he lied and said that. And so I don't see his video content that much. Like, but you hear this man, he says things like, oh my God, he says things like, what was the quote? That he would be a quote, I will be a dictator on day one, end quote. I will be a dictator. What? Sorry, how is that not just like mind-bogglingly persuasive to anybody? Like he is outwardly saying what he would do. Believe him, believe the man and what he says. He certainly would. Across issues, the extremism is really, really important. I would also say we need to play offense on the economy. We need to keep abortion and reproductive freedom front and center. Georgia's 6-week abortion ban and the overturning of Roe v. Wade was because of Trump. He appointed the judges who overturned Roe v. Wade, and he has said that he would do everything to keep to pass a national abortion ban. And these extreme abortion bans are already hurting women in Georgia and all over the country. On the economy, President Biden has a clear contrast. He's been working to lower costs for families. He's taken on drug companies, oil companies, banks, and fought against, and there's more to do on this, but he's fought against price gouging, that corporations are seeing record profits while people are going into the grocery store and seeing record prices. Maybe those two things are correlated. There's more to do on that, but he's been fighting hard and clear. In contrast, Trump would cut Social Security. He would cut Medicare. He said it. He would roll back the Obamacare. I was like many folks probably on this call. I was raised in the Southern Church. I was raised in the Episcopal Church in Augusta, and I know the teachings. Without fail, Jesus said, "Care for the sick, care for the poor, feed the hungry, fight for the least among us." And good God, if isn't denying healthcare, rolling back Obamacare, the opposite of what I think I hold near and dear and believe. On reproductive freedom, Trump has said women should be, and I'm sorry to use all this traumatizing language, honestly, because I hope I probably should have said a bit of a trigger warning, but it's just like the stakes are unbelievably high, and this is how we need to be talking about it and how we need to be communicating why this election matters. But Trump has said women should be punished if they have an abortion. In contrast, President Biden is fighting to protect women's freedoms and restoring Roe v. Wade. We've got to restore Roe v. Wade. On democracy, I think I mentioned this, but he'd be a dictator. Extremism is out of control. So across the board, and I will note this is also rooted in polling, just like what people are measurably feeling and are moved by if they're swing voters. Inflation, cost of living, healthcare access, housing affordability, gun violence, Social Security, protecting Social Security. Also really important, civil rights, student debt, gun violence, racial justice, mass incarceration, ending mass incarceration and protecting voter rights are all unbelievably important. That's that on issues. An apology, I see some questions in the chat, but I'm not quite able to multitask, so I'll get to that at the end. I want to talk about our organizing program, because that is the part of the program that I am running, that I am focused on, and that I need your help. I hope we can all be on the same team. We must, to persuade the voters in the right places to support President Biden and Democrats at every level of the ballot, we must build a massive statewide volunteer team. This team can't just be led by staffers. So if you know anybody who's looking for a full-time role, we are actively hiring, so please let me know. But it's going to be managed, run by, in every corner of the state, organizers, volunteers, volunteer leaders, folks who step up and say, this is where I draw the line, folks like y'all. And that's what it's going to take to contact and persuade the voters we need to win. From a programmatic point of view, one part of the organizing culture, or some of the key values that I think we're really trying to emphasize are, one, the campaign's got to be welcoming everyone. Folks got to feel good when they show up to a field office and feel like they're part of something else. The campaign's going to value every single supporter, every single voter, every person who's on our team. We've got to direct the energy we have towards winning activities. This is one thing that will be brand new this year. I'm sorry, I should have probably explained why I'm in a hotel. I'm in Wilmington, Delaware right now for a national training, and we're learning a ton. And so I literally just was in a training like a couple hours ago. And so bear with me as I just sort of roll this out, because why not be transparent? But I am so flipping hyped about the organizing program we're going to run this year, because we're going to do direct voter contact for sure. We're going to knock the doors. We're going to knock every single door that we need to 3 times, targeted doors, maybe more, hopefully more, through volunteer capacity and also through some paid capacity. We are also going to build a program that doesn't just manage to that actually says, like, in the communities where we need to win, we've got to be figuring out how to reach people. Voters are hard to reach. I don't know if y'all did any phone banking last year recently, but like the contact rates are low. If you get somebody on the phone, that is precious. Like that is your chance. But we've got to get more creative with the ways that we reach voters. That means integrating at every single level online communications. Getting like, let's say an organizer shows up in Jenkins County, Georgia. I am certain I know there's a really strong Democratic county party there, a new chair named Gwen, who's just crushing it. But I'm certain there's also Facebook groups in Jenkins County where probably a couple thousand people, a couple hundred people, the organizer needs to show up and contact those admins and start organizing online, start posting, start involving, DMing, reaching people where they actually are. Because if you can't reach them on the phones, you can probably find them on Facebook. Add them, become their friend, invite them to something. Events are going to be a core part of our organizing tenets as well, and events that make sense in the communities. And then one more thing, and there's more as well, but key issue organizing. Part of the campaign this year, where it makes sense, will be showing up to, co-organizing, building for issue-specific organizing events. So for example, let's say we have partners who are putting on a big abortion rally in downtown Atlanta or in Clayton County or somewhere. Part of our mandate will be to help and to show up. And that is part of the campaign. That is part of it. That is organizing. You know, it's like not just, these aren't all happening in isolation. We must be building all together. And then training is essential. And especially, and I will note, because I'm very much thinking about staff right now, at the staff level, like really making sure people have the tools, the wisdom, the intentionality to be really good organizers will be essential. And also for every single member, every single person who steps up and joins and helps out with the campaign, we have skills to learn and you have skills to share. And so the training isn't just one way, but it's having intentional conversations in communities about how can we do this better. There's more there, but I think I'll leave it with we must find ways to connect on a person-to-person level to even begin to think about persuading people who are on the fence. And so reaching out, engaging people in your network, family members, second cousins, folks you've met a couple times. Again, it's hard, but folks in your networks and also outside of your networks it's the name of the game this year is persuasion. So we've got to get out there and do it at a greater scale than we've ever done it before. Briefly, structure of the campaign and long-term impact. Our senior advisor is Jonay Wartell. She's amazing. She helped run the runoffs and is just a fount of wisdom. Our state director is Portia White. I mentioned them, and Lacey Morrison's the state campaign manager. I mentioned them because their names might pop up. You might hear from them, but I'm working directly with them. They're great. We're hiring rapidly. We're hiring a team that looks like Georgia, that's experienced, that's hungry, that's excellent. If you know anybody who's interested in that type of full-time work, please let me know. And we're open to all types of candidates. Again, this isn't specifically, I'll say this isn't just a young person's game anymore, and it can't be. So if you know anybody who wants to do this full-time, let me know. And I think we'll start DVC by June 1st, if not sooner. I have a lot of questions and a lot of things I still need to figure out about coordination, but I'm very excited for us to work hand in hand on the ground and at the statewide level with the state caucuses, with the congressional candidates, with folks who are running. And again, a big shout out to folks I see on this call, Pam Woodley, Bob Herndon, Jake Field, Kimberlyn Carter, others who worked so hard on Fighting 50 and candidate recruitment. because we have a dynamite slate of candidates running at so many levels of the ballot this year. And so I haven't had all those conversations, but I'm certain, and my heart's still there. So I'm certain we will work closely together to build this together as well. And then in terms of long-term impact, like this is everything. This is why we do this work. Like we're not going anywhere. I'm from Augusta. I'm in Atlanta now. Like this is home. Hiring locally sort of makes a difference. It's not the only thing. We'll have some folks, and we'll consider anybody from anywhere. Georgia experience is a big thing, but especially in building such a big team, hiring folks who have experience in Albany, Georgia, and can continue to organize there perhaps after. We don't have money to hire people after the election yet, but like, heck, maybe we'll fundraise for that and keep it going. I'd love to see the party do that. So TBD, but plant that little seed out there that it would be brilliant for the party to run a year-round organizing program, and perhaps essential if we're thinking about candidate recruitment. Last thing I'll say, and then I'll answer questions. Just this is a massive, massive organizing opportunity in terms of long-term impact. So many literally tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people are going to get activated or reactivated for the first time since Obama or ever. And that is a brilliant opportunity for us to bring new folks into the fold, into Necessary Trouble and groups like Necessary Trouble all over the state, to keep them involved and keep folks organizing and win again and again and again. And that translates into legislative session next year, right? Like, let's be ready to show up at the State House and fight. We're going to have to. We'll have a couple more seats, so maybe we'll have a little more power. So with that, I think I will close and answer questions. I hope I connected to what David Pepper said enough, but it's just everything he said is so important. And it's like, let's set up this year to recruit like heck next year, for sure.
Okay, Teddy, thank you so much for that overview of a lot of information. We have a couple of questions that I think we'll have time to answer. So you talked a little bit about the connection as to what you will be doing with the state people who are running at the state. Can you expound on that? Gareth wanted to know, will she, as a candidate for State Senate 46, be able to participate in the trainings that you're providing, or will there be a match in the type of training provided and what she needs at the level she's running as a candidate?
Yeah. Gareth, thank you so much for running. Oh my goodness, it's good to meet you. I love to hear that you're running for Senate District 46. Sorry we haven't met already. And yes, I'd love to talk more about this, but trainings, yes, unequivocally. Literature carrying, yes. Like, I think the relationship needs to be held at the local level. There will be an organizer or a regional organizing director on the ground close, and they will be empowered to work with you to get folks to sign up for shifts, to run coordinated canvases, to knock the doors we need, and deliver that. Like, when you show up to the door, it's like, what do you lead with? And I think in a lot of cases, especially in targeted districts that we must win, or folks who are canvassing with a targeted sorry, not even targeted, a candidate, to lead with introducing the candidate, because folks need a reason to care. And you can get to the Biden stuff, and don't forget to mention the stakes. Like, don't not say that, like, yeah, we were in the most important election of our lives again. Democracy is literally, the Constitution is literally on the ballot. But like, okay, yeah, I get that. What else? What else? And so, Gareth, I would love to talk with you more, but I think unequivocally, training, integrated canvases, integrated events, carrying your literature, tabling, doing high traffic canvassing, clipboarding, showing up and being visible. And again, visibility is so important to the campaign this year. I hope to have a bajillion yard signs. Like, we're hyped about this. This matters. It matters. People need to see, especially rural parts of Georgia, people need to see that and almost have a permission structure to be like, I am not alone. Actually, there are Democrats around. I know that. I felt that growing up in Augusta. And I know there were Democrats around, but a lot of times it didn't feel like it. And so that is so important. And so same thing with yard signs, et cetera. We're in.
Okay, our next question has to do with working with young adults. I know that you have, in your research, have found that many young adults they're disillusioned about the war in Gaza. And one thing that you said was that I think that I think may, at least to me, indicates you're thinking about this, so you can expound upon it, is, you know, finding out what issue that who you're talking to is concerned about, and then helping them understand what Biden Harris has done in relation to it. So can you expound upon how, what the plan is at this point to work with young adults to make sure they're coming back to Biden? And yeah, just start there, and then I'll ask you the second part of the question.
Yeah. Couple things. We're in a moment of deep pain, hurt, sadness. I can say, I mean, y'all know President Biden, like, he is so deeply empathetic and like knows how he knows grief, you know, like he knows hurt. And I'm certain he feels that in this moment. And in leading our country, he is trying to the best of his ability, and this is what we elected him and what we trust him to do, lead us out of a terrible, terrible, devastating, heart-wrenching situation. Students are feeling a lot of pain on campus right now, and they're fired up, and they're sitting in. And I come from a student organizing tradition. Some number of years ago, I probably would have been out there sitting in for fossil fuel divestment, a campaign I ran way back in the day around climate. And so I feel it. We're going to run a big campus organizing program. We'll have a campus organizing director, hopefully some number of organizers. We're going to be showing up. That program will be focused on voter registration. Campuses turn over every 2 years, 4 years. And so there are a lot of folks. Georgia is generally pretty well registered because of automatic voter registration. Campuses aren't. And so we will deeply invest in voter reg and then commit to vote cards on campus. But what you're getting at is like a heart question. It's not just like a tactics question. And I don't know. And I think it's going to be hard and something our campaign and we collectively need to figure out. It's been a topic of conversation this weekend. It will continue to be a topic of conversation. I don't have all the answers right now or how I necessarily want to talk about it publicly, but suffice it to say that the president cares a ton. Yeah. And we've got to have a direct message and talk with students and with young people to meet them where their heart is, because my heart is with them.
So, okay. I know that President Biden is expected to come to Morehouse and give the commencement speech. And I would imagine that his whole team is considering, you know, there may be protests and things related while he is speaking. I don't know if this would fall underneath your venue, but we had a question from Tara, who was concerned about his visit and the protest. And I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's like expected, right? Like if he does public events, if he shows up places, like protests have already happened. One of the beautiful things about America is that we have a deep tradition of civil disobedience, of protests, peaceful, but folks standing up for what they believe is right. The president, when interrupted, when he's speaking, is happy to hear somebody out. Like he's like, it's okay. I don't know. It's sort of, I don't know quite what to say about this, but like, he is just so thoughtful and wants to hear from people. And especially when folks are hurting or want to express themselves publicly, he will hear. The event venue will probably kick them out after a minute, peacefully escort them out of the venue, and the event will continue. But I guess I would say, like, unlike Trump, who would be a dictator on day one and would want to suppress any votes of dissent, comments of dissent, I don't think the president really wants to do that. I think he wants to hear from people. He wants to hear from voters. He wants to know what people are feeling, doing, saying. And we also have to, as voters, you know, we elected him to lead. And so he will do that for the American people as well.
So as we move forward in this journey, how can we communicate with you so you don't get overloaded? Because we probably have more time to type than you do, questions at least. So that if we have thoughts about things to consider with communication or things that we hear in our interactions in the field that we think would be helpful for you to consider or implement, what's the best way to communicate with you without overloading you?
Thank you. A couple things. Feel free to email me. I just put my email in the chat. We will soon, right now I'm an organizing team of 1. We will soon be an organizing team of 60. And so I will be certain to, based on where you are geographically, if you reach out to me, I can put you in touch with the local organizer or regional organizing director, somebody who will be on the ground, and honestly, like, their job will be to be perfectly responsive to you. And so if I'm a little slow, they will be much quicker, but I'm happy to direct you in the right way. I meant to put in the chat, and I don't know if I did. No, I did. The training series, that link will also just always have our event signups. And so showing up to an event, like, there will always be time before or after, and I'll try to show up to things as much as I can, be out there myself, knocking doors. So I'm happy to meet up or see you at an event. And then, yeah, no, email me, please. Seriously, especially as we're getting going. Like, I love Necessary Trouble, and I just know that y'all have so much wisdom and understanding of what it actually takes to organize for the long term. I'm talking a lot, I'm saying we're doing all these things. Y'all have been doing it. So you're experts in this field, and so I need your help in building this and then keeping in touch and making sure we're holding dear our North Stars of long-term impact in particular.
Okay, and with that in mind, can you share, Pat asked specifically, Pat Berg, can you share what your thoughts are in terms of leaving Georgia as we're doing all this planning? It's sort of like planning for now and then planning for the future. What are your thoughts about things that you have to put in place to leave Georgia better organized and staffed after the election so that we can continue to build infrastructures that get us people at the State House that are working for us, not against us, and keeping people engaged and understanding our governmental institutions so that they are actually engaged citizens.
Yeah.
On a consistent basis.
I love this question. On staffing first, we're going to hire a couple hundred people probably this year, maybe more, maybe less, TBD budget. And so many of them will either be from Georgia or have Georgia experience, or will have aspirations to keep organizing here for the long term. And so I will feel pretty personally responsible for trying to keep as many of them here. For example, like, let's staff up the State House. Like, let's really get in and get a lot of great legislative assistants, folks coming off the campaign who then can do some of the policy work and get involved with session. I've done 3 sessions now, and so I have a pretty good sense of how that works and how people staff and how you can plug in. And so I think that's like an immediate next step. The long-term organizing thing is like, let's all keep pitching the party, and I will too, on let's raise and fund a long-term organizing plan so that it won't be staffed at the same level, but let's have a presence in the community for the long haul. That will help with building local organizing infrastructure. I have a lot to learn about what the existing local organizing infrastructure looks like already. I think plugging people into groups that are already active, for example, the county party structure of the party is great. It's set up. There's a county party pretty much in every county. Like, there's a chair, there's a team, there's a regular meeting. Like, let's plug folks into, if they haven't already, to the county party. Because we'll just be contacting so many folks and bringing new people into the fold. Again, making sure folks are feel and are part of the team. And then similarly, like specifically with Necessary Trouble, like again, y'all have a pretty good team already, so I don't mean to swell your Zooms any further, but I would love for folks who are volunteering for the first time to learn that they could in fact be involved with something that is in fact a lasting group, lasting club. And so as we build this, I think that will be a continued part of the conversation. And then adding issue organizing as being like one of the tactics we're using as a campaign. Again, that is brand new. That has not happened. Usually you just DVC. And we're going to crush our doors and folks, don't get me wrong. But like, that is really exciting. And so plugging in and already being involved during the campaign with issue fights within Georgia across issues in localities in ways that make sense. Like those are teams that are going to keep organizing, I'm certain. So yeah. And then training people to lead, training people to organize their own group, club, Zoom, etc. is key.
Fantastic. Teddy, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And I know you have given us the mobilize information for the events, and we have your personal email, and I'm sure Pat will send it out to us. And we will send you our thoughts and just add them to your list. We will be patient to hear response. And if we write you an ideal at 2 o'clock in the morning, put your phone on, don't disturb, because some of us get up real early. So
I love that. No, thank you. And one last thing, just I forget about all the fancy stuff. I'm like so organizing, like so grassroots. We're gonna have events. President Biden's gonna be here. The VP is gonna be here. Like, let me know if you want to come to that stuff, or no, that's probably opening up a can of worms. But I'll try to get you all invited. I'll try to make sure you know, like, when these folks are coming. Like, I would love for you to be part of the cool parts of the campaign too.
yes, we want to come to everything.
The president care a ton about Georgia. They will be here. Let's meet them. So thank you. Thank you for having me. As ever, a joy.
Okay, thank you so much, Teddy. Oh, great. So I think I am turning this back over to Pam Wuichet.
Actually, I think it's to me this time.
Okay, good.
Karen, just because we adjusted. Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you so much, Teddy. I cannot even begin to say what it's like to hear the head of a presidential campaign in Georgia, talking about Georgia long game. What about that? Isn't that absolutely mind-blowingly amazing? And talking about integrating at all the levels, including local parties and grassroots groups. Mind-blowing. New day, new day. Thank you, Teddy Smyth. We love you. We have loved you for a long time, and we still love you. So thank you for your service. And here we go. What a great launch for us for this for the presidential part of what happens this year. We are gonna just pivot just a tiny bit and go back and pick up Rosaia Shepard. Rosaia, we have not forgotten, and we have not frozen you out of the updates. And I know your update is actually for Gareth Fenley. So would you jump in?
Yes, I will. And I apologize. I've got a rainstorm, thunderstorm. So if you hear background noise, that's what it is. I know some of you are already on board supporting Gareth's campaign. I'm going to say up front, in order to get more information or join the team, put her name in the chat, Gareth, Gareth, and then put your name and your email. So why should you do that? I'm going to give you 4 quick reasons. And this really relates to what Teddy Smyth has just said, what David Pepper said. Gareth is kind of the poster child. So she is running for Senate District 46. That is currently held by somebody maybe you've never heard of named Bill Cowser. I don't know if you know him. He is the brother-in-law of Brian Kemp. He is the majority leader of the Senate. He cast the vote that brought us the 6-week abortion ban. Now, let me tell you what else is going on here. All of a sudden, there is a campaign. It's by the Koch brothers PAC. It is very slick media, and it's touting the virtues of Bill. And my thought is, why would the Koch brothers get involved with the CalCert campaign in little old Senate District 46? Well, I'm going to tell you what I've concluded. I've concluded that because Kemp cannot run again, he's turned out, that in 26, he is going to try to ease his brother-in-law into that position. And he has elicited assistance from the Koch brothers to begin to set the table for that in this little old tiny Senate District 46. I am here to ask you to help me blow that crap up. Here are the ways that you can do it. One is at Becky and Pat's and also at my house. So do right, Gareth, put your name, put your email address in the chat so you can get the details. We are doing postcard. Now, generally we ask if you come to postcard, you bring the stamps. What is it? Well, they're packs of 20, and that's about 10 bucks. But I want you to come, even if you cannot afford to do that, because we've got to put on the labels, we've got to put on the stamps, we've got to write the message, we've got to put them in code order. Come, we need your hands, not just your money. The other thing I want to say is, and I'll ask you, Gareth, if you would please put your website in the chat. We need money. Hey, you heard it. We need money. The stamps, the printing, etc. So $10 is fine. Some of you can do more. In the primary, an individual can contribute up to $3,300 to a single campaign. We are targeting the gap between us and CalCert is 21,000 votes. That's how many people we want to reach and awaken this group that you've heard Teddy talk about and you've heard David talk about, that are kind of like gone to sleep or given up. This is a heavily red district. The last time, indeed, the person who ran against CalCert, who has been there for 12 years, got less than 40% of the vote, just as David talked about. Help us in any way you can. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Rosaia. Thank you, Gareth, for running. I am reminded at how persuasive Rosaia Shepard is and can be. Aren't we glad that she is on our side in these ways? And I also want to just point out Dominique Cooper's email and donation link is also in the chat. Dominique is running for a very different kind of race. The school board, hugely important. Not a state house or state senate, but critically important. Dominique is also one of our troublers, and we are so grateful to have her, and want to urge you, if you have a little bit of extra money, her to really contribute. She is being voted on now, right? This is her race. This is the final election, May 21. So want to really lift up both Dominique Cooper and Gareth, and we are so grateful to both of you for your service, for the service you have already given by running. And on that note, let me say, I'm going to pull up the date for our next meeting, which is going to be on Sunday, June 9th at 4 o'clock. We would love to have you there. We'll be sending out reminders. I want to thank everybody who has been involved in this meeting. I want to particularly thank all of you who helped us improvise at the top of the meeting. That was very helpful. And we are so grateful, especially to have some of the new folks who have joined us this time. We are so happy to welcome you into Necessary Trouble. And as part with those longtime troublers know that we usually end with a song. Sometimes in the past, it's been somebody like Michelle Truxillo singing. Recently, it's been recorded songs, and we have another one for you coming up today, which feels like it captures some of what's been going on and some of what we hope to invite each other to do. So if you can stick around, please do. If you need to jump off, then I know that that's fine too, but it's a very good song and you will recognize it.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow. If we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong. I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. Oh, it won't be long. You're gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride. If I have things you need to borrow, for no one can fill those are your needs that you won't let show. You just call on your brother when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. You just might have a problem that you don't understand. We all need somebody to lean on. You just call on your brother when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. You just might have a problem that you don't understand. We all need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can carry, I'm right up the road. I'll share your load if you just call me. Call me. I'm right up the road. Just call me, baby. I'm right up the road. I'm a friend. Call me. Call me. I'm right up the road. You gotta call me. I'm a friend. Call me. I'll carry your load. Call me. I'll carry your load.
So we here at Necessary Trouble try to change Georgia and love and support each other along the way. And how about if we just all take
Mute off.
ourselves off mute And just give a good shout out to all the people who put their effort and time into the election and to Necessary Trouble and to the meeting. And thank you all for the incredible work
Yay.
everybody is doing. Great love all around.
Thank you. Great meeting. Thank you.
Thank you again to Dominique and to Gareth. Way to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for
Bye-bye.
organizing this. This is
Yes.
great.
Yes.
Really great
They're terrific. Yeah.
plan. Great program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes. Thanks.
Bye-bye,
guys. Bye.
All right. Bye, everybody.